The last few weeks have got me thinking, in a digital world, well, the challenges are in the future, an awful lot of the history that we sort of look at now, are they going to exist in a virtual form? Are we going to remember where we've put stuff? Or even, once we've gone, are we actually going to find those things and actually carry them over? I've been watching my partner do an awful lot of his family history, and he's doing mine as well. So you can be fair to say that he unearths sort of legacy items, and they provide a valuable glimpse into sort of like the past and actually the relevance to where those individuals were at the time. And it's the books that actually sort of like strive and actually give the biggest insight. And yes, you might say during the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, we didn't have the mass media like this at the moment. But what is going to happen to all of these digital assets? And actually, is there a place for the printed item? And really bizarrely, I look at it and I go, my dad passed away 2 years ago, and I look at it and I go, I've not looked at any of his photos, and yet photos that we have printed, we often look at more. And it's probably the same with books. And I sort of think, where are we going to be in 20 years time? Or even 50 years time? And I look back to where I was in the early 2000s, and I'm thinking, I can't even open up some of the files that I was working on then. So the relevance moving forward, is that still going to work? So whilst I accept that some books will be recycled and they won't exist infinitum, yes, let's be real about it. Paper is a crop, and it's sort of harvested and then turned into paper along with pulp and all of that. But it's about moving it forward and actually going, are we going to keep digital data going forward? And what's the implications of this? And realistically, it's how we move it forward. And I think it's very interesting how history sort of reveals itself in a book. It's often very carefully chronologically ordered. It is a collated archive. And I won't be rude, but some things don't make a book and other things will make a book. But digitally, we seem to be holding on to an awful lot more because actually it's so easy. So a pared down sort of history probably says a lot more. And I must admit, looking over the last few weeks, there's been a few things that have caught my eyes. One of which is this, which is a Penistone Almanac from 1953. And really bizarrely, yeah, it's all dog-eared and it's sort of got wonderful things as sort of like the legacy adverts in there, and it's a beautiful statement of actually where things were, the sort of the design of the time, and equally photographs and everything else, and even sort of like sort of legacy property sales and people's bequests from their wills and probate and that sort of thing, which is obviously for a family historian really, really valuable. But it's sort of even the fact that it's really battered and sort of like it's got a wonderful historical feel to it. And I know that's me with a very biased print view, but I think it's about sort of taking it forward and looking at it and going, okay, this is quite interesting. It's here, and whilst it's not in mint condition, it says an awful lot. Equally, I sort of look at the other things that sort of like have been listed in family history sort of things, and with my partner doing it, he's from Shepley originally, and there is the sort of like the millennial book, and we're now 20 years on, and there's probably other things that wouldn't have even made it because actually in the 1980s and the 1990s they were deemed too recent to actually be now, but 1980s and even the 1970s, they're now history. And I look at things like my partner talks regularly about the Shepley bed push and pulls up some of the photos and they're sharing it. And it's those valuable insights to community history and culture that we don't seem to actually have sort of popping up now. And it's building on that, and it is the fact that that lives on a bookcase in the office and is there for sort of moving forward. I know, just sort of picking on another title which always sort of grabs my attention, and it's from where I'm originally from, down in Coventry and Warwickshire, and there's sort of like the Kenilworth Railway book, and yet again there's sort of intricate diagrams in there of things and beautiful historical photographs, and yes, you can get an awful lot of an insight from it. And I know just from visiting my mum recently and just talking of family history, because my partner's quite substantially into it, and we were unearthing some of the Nimmo family history, and there's certain things, and my mum shared some information, and in there was the book from the village Catrin in Ayrshire, which is quite rural Ayrshire, I should say, and it's got all of the history of the cotton mill in there, and all the local sort of like things that have changed and developed, and the streets and the specific areas of how things work. And it's quite interesting how we won't have this on Google Street View, because Google Street View is only there from the last few years. What's going to happen to all the more recent history? And I still feel the book is the place for it, because it goes on a coffee table, you share it with somebody, somebody comes round, has a look at it, you start talking about it, people actually cherish these things. So as a print professional, I would say print isn't dead. We can offer so much more, unlike the Scottish Village History book, which was a short run and actually you were really lucky to get a copy. Now we have the flexibility to offer short reprints, do bespoke editions, or even actually sort of localise it even further and go, actually we need this to go in this sort of specific order, and this is relevant to this part of the community, which could be very easily done now. As a printer, yes, you're going to say I'm banging on about print, but the very fact there's a bookcase behind me, and it's all of the things that interest me. It's the fact there's art and design books, photography books on there. There's things about history and other things that I've picked up along the way to help me learn and develop. You can't demonstrate that, and the fact that we've all been on Zoom calls, and that has been the one thing people have been judged by, actually what books they have on their bookcase. We can do the print and make it relevant to you. And it's not dead. Bring it home, make it work, and look at it. And yes, you could pump it to a large online retailer. They produce it. And to be fair, the books I've seen by said big one, okay, they're good, they're okay. What I will say is the quality of imagery doesn't get the attention that we would give it. Actually, the design and layout, it's so automated. It lacks any of the sort of the feeling of behind you as an author or putting a collection together. And I can only say that, yeah, this is the difference. It's small artisan, we care about it, and actually we're passionate about it. I take that Kenilworth Railways book. That was a major thing, published by a local author using a local printer to actually print it, and it was on sale in local shops. Yes, local shops still exist, they're few and far between, but independent booksellers are now on the rise, and there's a cracking one down in Holmfirth and Reed, and I mentioned other ones I'm well aware of, sort of in Halifax and in the Calder Valley as well. Not so many in Huddersfield, but they're still around. So we're here, we're great to help you. I can advise you on proofreaders, I can advise you on editors, and with the skills are there. So if you're ever looking at thinking, actually, what are we going to do with this collection or box of local history photos? Perhaps it might be the time to actually put it together and show some pride in it and bring it to add value. I know of one local village that actually uses it as the publishing arm to actually generate funds for improvements around the village. So it's all a part of actually having that bigger picture and that sense of community. Bring your history to life.